I think there's like a Hunter S. Thompson quote about like, I never had any success until I stopped trying to write like the New York Times or something like that. And it was kind of like that for me.
Welcome to Log Off. Everyone has an internet story to tell, and today we're getting Vince Mancini's. I first met Vince way back in 2007 over email, which is also the communication method we used to plan the launch of FIlmdrunk.com, a place for Vince to blog all his hilarious thoughts on movies and culture. Within a year, it was getting close to 1 million visitors every month and was acquired by Uproxx to be the foundation for their movie coverage. Since then, he's done many more fun and interesting things. He's written for GQ and The Ringer. He's released nearly 600 episodes of the FIlmdrunk Frotcast. He's chronicled rewatches of The Sopranos and The Wire in podcast form. And most recently, he took his talents to Substack and launched The Content Report, where he blogs freely and funnily about content without having to answer to stupid advertisers or stupider bosses. We'll get to all of that. But first, Vince, let's start this podcast the way we always do at the beginning. What is your earliest internet memory?
Oh man, I saw that on the list of questions, and I was trying to brainstorm that one. Honestly, like the first thing that I remember is going to sizzle.com to try and find some naked lady pictures. I don't remember like what for. You know what it was? I think it was an AOL chat room was like one of the first like internet things that I did, and I probably just like asked the chat room like, "Hey, I hear you can find like naked ladies on the internet. Where do you do that?" And they were like, sizzle.com. And then I went over there and waited for, I don't know, what was it? Probably like 60 seconds to get, each chunk of the image that would download in like linear rows at a time.
Yeah, becoming a man, 1-0 and 1 at a time.
Yeah, don't ask me who the first like naked ladies I saw on the internet were. I don't know. I'm trying to remember who like the early like late 90s internet porn pinups were. I don't remember, but good for them.
Yeah, congrats. Do you remember like the first time you actually published any content online?
God, I'm trying to remember what because I know there was stuff before, before FIlmdrunk, obviously. I was part of like a writers collective that I don't remember. Probably some sort of like blogspot thing where I wrote probably like really bad stuff on there. I think it might have been pre-blogspot, and then like I remember reading like the early blogs that some of which that you were involved with, and then at a certain point, like I started a blog spot where I just like did a few of those just sort of like as a online portfolio type thing. And I think that's what I used to get a job at the network that ran The Superficial and I Watch Stuff, which was, I think it was called Anti-Clown. Yeah, back in the day. I'm pretty sure, I'm hoping the statute of limitations is up on like any sort of NDAs and like non-compete agreements I signed. But yeah, I mean, they were only paying me $8 a post at first. So I don't think they're like, I don't think that's going to buy them much of secrecy from me.
Yeah, I went back and tried to find the emails because I could not remember the name of that site you were writing for. It was I Watch Stuff. And then for those that don't know, when you first started writing for FIlmdrunk, I think the statute of limitations is definitely over. You were writing under the pseudonym Lance Martini.
Yeah.
Kind of hiding in plain sight there.
I mean, I didn't really expect anyone to honestly like come after me for the non-compete agreement, which I think now are like officially unenforceable, at least in California. But there was like a non-compete agreement over not working for competing blog networks, which I instantly violated. I think that all started, by the way, I emailed Matt Ufford. I remember he had a section called journo porn, which was basically like back in the day when a writer would get like way too enamored with whatever subject he was profiling or she was profiling and write like really purple prose. And there was there was like a really egregious one about Ken Shamrock, which I had found because I was all into the early MMA blogosphere. I don't remember who wrote it or what it was on, but that was how I met Matt Ufford, who was writing With Leather at the time, which had spun off from Kissing Susie Colbert. God, don't you miss like having fun inside jokes as names for websites?
I do. Yes.
So yeah, so I met him, and I think I mentioned that I was writing for I Watch Stuff, and then he put me in touch with you, and I think we went from there.
Yeah, I never asked you. Did you ever hear back from like Anti-Clown about the Lance
Nope.
Martini stuff?
No,
Nothing?
nothing. I'm like curious what that guy's doing now, or every once in a while I'm like, I wonder what that guy's up to, but like I'm not sure. I really have no idea. I've never been able to figure out the answer to that question. And Lance Martini was actually like when I was doing stand-up comedy one night, like a bunch of my drunk friends had come that night and were like shouting for me while the other comedians were going on, and the guy was like, who do you want, Lance Martini? And then so they had started like calling me that. So then when I broke my non-compete agreement, it just felt like an obvious pseudonym to use.
I never knew there was an actual origin story for that. I thought you just came up with something that sounded similar.
Yeah, no, that had like a legit origin story. I think God, I think I remember the comedian. I believe he's dead now. San Francisco. I think it was Jimmy Gunn. I think was his name.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like too old man yells at cloud, but to me, like that was the best internet era.
Yeah,
Anyone could publish content, but it actually required a little bit of effort, and you had to earn your readership. It was like pre-social media. You couldn't just like fire up a Twitter account and yell at everyone anonymously. Google Reader like gave us a really easy way to compile
yeah.
all of our favorite long form stuff. Smartphones didn't exist. Like if you could go back to any internet time, would that be it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it probably would be. Like, it's, obviously you're right. I mean, it sounds like old man yells at cloud, but I feel like the question I always have is like, I mean, it's two parts. Like, because obviously the architecture of the internet and who owns like the major players in it has changed drastically, and it's no longer as level of a playing field or as wild of a west as it was back in those days. So obviously there's that, but then I also wonder if part of it is just sort of what happens when like the mall goes from being like the cool mall to being, the mall that no one goes to anymore. Or the same things that happened to Facebook, where it was like, yeah, it was really fun when it was just like you and your friends that were like a little hipper and a little, younger and sort of in the know. And so there's the atmosphere that creates. But then, once you expect to see your mom and your weird aunt and your grandma and like your neighbor Charles, like it's, it goes through a process of the audience isn't as cool anymore, and therefore like the things that you create for that audience has to get, you have to dumb it down for the audience that's there. So would never discount like all the business forces and that changing the internet. But I definitely think in the early days, it was like, I think we wrote differently, and a lot of it's super obnoxious to go back and read now. But I think there was just an element of like, not everybody was on the internet then.
Yeah, I had a good conversation with Will Leach from Deadspin, and I kind of asked him about regrets over like things that you wrote in the past, and he was like, no, it's like it's proof that you grew as a human being. So like, yeah, it's easy to go back and read that stuff and think it's cringe, but I mean, if you're not evolving from that, that would be kind of an insult to yourself.
For sure. I mean, and like I think things that I wrote like 2 weeks ago are cringe too. So it's not, like anytime like time passes and you go back, you're gonna like some stuff's gonna make you cringe. But like I think people just have to, if you go back and read that kind of stuff, which I wouldn't recommend, but you have to do it with the understanding that like the audience was different, and like there was a different level of people, understanding sarcasm and understanding,
Oh yeah.
understanding subtext of things that you don't expect from an audience anymore. And also, like I remember writing stuff about like celebrities or whatever, like the idea that any of them would read it was sort of unthinkable at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember that too, but quickly, like we would see little nuggets of like, oh crap, they are gonna find this, and then the context of what you write changes, and so how you write it changes. But like we seem very naive to look back on it now, but like yeah, we really didn't. We really didn't think that like, oh, your boss was going to read that blog, or like or even like the celebrity that you were writing about was going to Google themselves and find it. Like it didn't really occur to us at the beginning.
Yeah, that's for sure. Did you have any kind of moment like that at Film Drunk where maybe someone jumped in the comments or
Oh
someone
yeah.
emailed you and you're like, oh shit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first like celebrity sort of email encounter was Eli Roth. And I think Eli Roth like just randomly emailed me like about, and I think it was like Uwe Boll had talked shit on Eli Roth and I was writing about it or something like that. And then Eli Roth like emailed a joke about Uwe Boll back to me. Yeah, and it was that was weird. And then that it's continued to get I remember, I'm trying to remember what year this was, but like with Damon Lindelof, I think this was like late in the lost years. Like it was unrelated to anything, but like someone was asking about like how many tabs he had open, or some sort of question about like what his workstation looked like. And so he did a screenshot of his browser, and FilmDrunk was one of the tabs, and that was one of the moments where I was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's not as cool as like you know a famous actor or whatever emailing you, but yeah, it's just those weird random you picked up on those weird random times where someone you're writing about like would find it, or you got evidence of that.
So eventually, Uproxx comes knocking. They want to acquire with Leather, our sports blog, and obviously Film Drunk. I'm curious because I wasn't part of it, and I don't think I've ever asked you. What do you remember about like that transition and the early days of Film Drunk in a new home?
It's so weird because I don't I don't know. Like the business side of it was so, I don't remember feeling like I had like a choice in the matter, and and I didn't know what to think. Like I remember Jarrett Meyer and Brian Brader, who were the Uproxx guys at that point, like took me and Matt Ufford, or we met them somewhere in New York because we were both living in New York at the time, and I think we met them to watch like a UFC event, and and I don't know. I wouldn't say that I got like the best impression. Like they didn't strike me as like suits, but they were, I don't know. It was like they were cool guys, and we're trying to feel each other out. And yeah, I don't really know what I don't know. Like they clearly wanted to get into internet publishing, but beyond that, I don't remember what like the business strategy discussions were like.
Okay.
Like I remember, I mean, at the very beginning, like I don't think much changed. Like it was basically like the sites were the same, and it was just like a different person paying us at the very beginning, from what I remember. But and then little things would change. Like I think they were trying to get like some sort of video site off the ground at the time, which didn't work out, and trying to remember things that aren't boring. I mean, it's slowly just like at a certain point, I think maybe like 2 years in, they wanted to make Uproxx into its own site and make, with Leather and Film Drunk be, at first it was just like the URL changed from filmdrunk.com to like filmdrunk.uproxx.com. And then they started, and then it was like uproxx.com/filmdrunk. But yeah, gradually like the branding started to shift that way, but it was sort of a slow process.
you said you didn't have a say in the matter. Do you regret that we made that transaction? Like, do you wish we'd kind of tried to see if we could go it on our own? Because I often think about that, and I wonder if we could have done a better job.
I mean, I think I definitely, like there is like the core group at the beginning. I think we were all sort of on the same page in the things that we sort of cared about, which was like, making like a cool publication, like making a, making content that we enjoyed that other people like us would like to read, which um is still like the very basic sort of business model that I understand and I want to do. And I remember in the early days, like, getting word from you, like, oh, we don't do this kind of content or that kind of content because, it doesn't make business sense to like alienate the readers that you want to come back, you know, every day. And then, like things like slideshows or like, like things that everybody does now as a standard just to like juice page views and to, at first it was like the slideshows. And then it was like autoplay videos and, I think there was like the fold, like we had a version of like the fold where it was like a page break. And then yeah, and in the early days, like I remember hearing from you like, yeah, we don't want to do a bunch of that because we don't want to like, we don't want to juice the numbers at the expense of losing readership, which always made sense as a business plan to me. And then the further along it went, like the more the internet in general and Uprocks in particular like got away from that, and sorry, that's like sort of a digression, but like, yeah, I think there was definitely a shared sense of purpose, like if you guys had held on to the company. But I don't know the business forces that were combining to like have you make that decision. Because I definitely think, you know, I don't think the guys that owned Uprocks, like I don't think that their high I don't think that their main motive was to like make a cool publication. Like I think they sort of looked at it more as like a money making thing and maybe like a prestige thing. And I don't think that that was what drove us. And so I think there's like a disconnect there for sure.
Yeah, I would say from my end, like I can't say what their motivations were. From my end, I think when we met, I was 25 years old,
Yeah.
and we had built, I was one of the biggest blog networks there was at that point. And that was back when blogs were like a primary source of consumption for a lot of people. It was before social media. So I just remember every morning waking up, if I did sleep the night before, like wondering how I was going to screw this up. It was before, like I felt lucky. It was before the term had come out, but like I felt imposter syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
and I had people from, people flying me to Los Angeles and like pulling the websites up on a big screen and being like, here's all the stuff we can do for you to make sure that, this stays secure, and we can make this bigger, and you can be part of our thing from the ground up. Uh, and so I had all these voices in my head, and I still have regrets. I wish I had not kind of broken it up and stuff like that. But I don't know, 25 years old, it was tough, man. So you're on Substack now. I mean, obviously that means you're not at Uprocks anymore. Do you want to talk at all about, how things ended there, and maybe like, what could have made that a little bit different?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that, I mean, who knows? It's tough to talk about now and think that you're special in any way when like, 80% of the media industry like seem like they got laid off in the last year and a half. But it is, it's still annoying to like see something that you built sort of, like the name's still out there and like you have no control over it, which I'm sure you can relate to, where it's like, you know felt like we built a thing and then someone else gets to be like, oh, this is our thing now. And we're gonna like the idea of taking what we built and then I don't know what they're doing with it, with the Will I Am, and like it just sounds like a collection of gobbledygook with like AI, and there's a famous person, and we're gonna do. It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't sound like, hey, we're gonna make a cool culture magazine or publication that people want to read, which is what I thought that I was building, and that like I thought, getting to this stage of a career, it's like you spend like the better part of your adult life basically like trying to refine an outlet for the thing that you do, and then it's and then and then they can just be like, oh, um we're gonna take control of this, and you're not gonna be a part of it anymore. But all that stuff started years ago, like when FIlmdrunk became a part of Uproxx, and it wasn't really subtle about like subsuming that within the greater Uproxx brand, and feeling like I had less and less of um you know a say in like the branding of it. And I remember having a conversation, when they took most of the FIlmdrunk branding off of the Uproxx site and turned it into just like something that was there. The posts were there, but you had to sort of search for FIlmdrunk, and it wasn't really like a separately branded thing anymore. I think the conversation we had was like, yeah, FIlmdrunks is like a cool brand, and that's not what we're like trying to do anymore. We're trying to be like, like a mainstream sort of kind of boring brand. And that was like the business strategy at the time, which seems so silly to me, and like so much of a bad managerial decision, because like if you look around, like how much did the Vice guys make solely because they had established that they were a cool brand? Like literally that was like their only asset. And
Yeah, there were brands just throwing millions of dollars at them hand over fist just to
yeah,
be associated with their videos.
yeah, and they were assholes, and they didn't pay their employees a lot, but like
Yeah.
they understood that like someone who is going to buy your business is going to pay more for it if people think it's cool than if it's just like, you know in the mid 20 teens, the idea was that everything was the numbers, and no one cared about whether people wanted to read it, or whether it was smart, or whether it was interesting. It was like, what do the numbers say? And then fast forward 5 years, like all those numbers mean nothing anymore. So I sort of went along with Uproxx, I don't know, probably for like 5 years after I could understand what the business model was like in any way. Like we're still trying to chase traffic or whatever, but I didn't really understand like the grand vision of it, and I still don't. but but yeah, so then just like getting abruptly laid off was, I mean, yeah, it sucks. When right before the Warner acquisition, like I had talked to Brett, and he was like, yeah, I think there might be some like layoffs coming. If you want to be like better positioned, like maybe think about moving to LA and be like our man in LA. And I was in San Francisco at the time. And I was at, I didn't have a family yet, so it wasn't like a huge move. A lot of my comedian friends had all moved to LA, so I was like, all right, fuck it, I'll move to LA, try this out for a while. And then like the moving van was literally the rental, like the U-Haul was literally parked in my driveway as I'm preparing to move all my shit to LA, which is a stressful ass process, and expensive in general. When then I got a call from Jarrett being like, oh yeah, we're gonna have to like cut your salary in half, basically. It'll cut you down to 50% salary, because they were trying to show like lower overhead, in order to like make it more attractive to a buyer. So then I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I didn't really have a choice in the matter other than to say like, fuck off, I'm leaving, which I don't know, maybe I should have. But so I was like, oh, okay, well that sucks. So then cut me down to 50% salary. And so then, I forget how much like PTO I had built up at that point. But then when they paid me out on it, when we got acquired, like when they paid out the PTO, because it was like, it was a shift from one ownership to the next, so they had to pay out the PTO on the previous one. They paid it out at the 50% salary instead of like what my actual salary was. And then it was kind of the same thing that happened again when I got laid off, where it was like, okay, you're getting laid off from Warner Music Group, so you're going to get a severance pay for like 2 weeks for every year of service, which was the Warner had owned Uprocks for 5 years, so I got like 10 weeks of severance. But it's like, okay, but I've been working for Uprocks since 2008. Like I'd been doing the same job since 2007. So yeah, it's this, it's that stuff that's like sort of asinine to, you feel like petty talking about it, but it's also like the stuff that makes you really angry. And then when we got acquired, like I didn't go back up to a 100%
Right.
salary. I think I went back up to like 86% of my previous salary. And then, Warner, like to their credit, had standard yearly raises or whatever and bonuses. And I think by the time like I left, it was close to what I'd been making 5 years before the acquisition, but wasn't quite there.
Are you so scarred by that like if someone came along with, they were going to start something that had that same mission statement or what we thought was the mission statement, would you turn it down? Or
Well, I don't know. I think if they had a mission statement, I'd be like, oh, cool. That's what the mission statement is. Like I think the problem was like not knowing what the mission statement was. In the beginning, it was like, we had our core group and I sort of understood what everybody did. And then, all that changed through various acquisitions at Uprocks to the point where it was just like, we were part of Warner Music Group, and I would go into the office and there's like, I don't know, 100 people, and I have no idea what any of those people do. And it's weird because it's like they moved into areas, like they started a bunch of podcasts, and it was like early on, like I had a podcast. I started my podcast in 2010, and I spent like a lot of time trying to get anyone at Uprocks like interested in that, or like trying to start a show of any kind like that together, and it never went anywhere. And then they just made like a bunch about like sneakers and shit. Like, okay, cool. Or whatever. Yeah, I don't get it. So I don't know what the mission statement was, and like I'm not sad. Like I don't feel like whatever they're trying to do, like I don't feel like I'm a part of it, and I don't feel sad about not being a part of it. But it annoys me that they get to use the name of the thing that I built to as that thing.
Can relate.
Yeah.
I meant to ask. I mean, you're such a good writer. It would have been very easy for you to like shun all other mediums, and yeah, you were really early to podcasting. I've always wondered like what made you take that leap, like before. I mean, anyone else at the company was really interested in that.
It's so funny because like at the time we were like, should we do a podcast? Nah, like everybody already has one of those. Like looking back on it now, it's like, oh, you were early to that. And I didn't feel like we were early to it at all at the time. At the time I was like, oh, I don't know. So, I mean, it was basically, yeah, like let's start one, let's see what happened. Like there wasn't a ton of thought put into it. It just was like that's where it seemed like fun things on the internet were going, in the same way that I got into blogging because I was reading blogs and it just seemed like a natural thing to do. I was sort of listening to podcasts, and it seemed like an outlet that was free and you could sort of do what you wanted with it and have fun with it, which it still does to some extent.
Do you see yourself ever getting into video now that I mean, I know you do podcast clips in video form, but like doing native video, things that you create just visually?
I don't know. It's so much more work to
That's
do
true.
video, and then like to to feel like you have to perform. I don't know. I have a hard time like it just it requires an amount of like forethought and planning that and like, you know, design that is tough for me. I'm not against it, but I don't think I'm like the main guy to go to for, which is funny because I like majored in film, but yeah.
So you'll criticize everyone else's films, but you won't make your own?
Kinda, yeah. No, I mean, I don't feel like I have the equipment. It takes so much like
Yeah.
money and manpower to do anything with video that it feels tough. Yeah.
I don't know, man.
I don't
The
really
biggest,
yeah, go ahead.
the biggest people on TikTok, it's pretty raw out there.
Yeah. But that's more like, it's more like reality TV kind of thing where people are just sort of like filming themselves like in the car or like wherever. I don't know. Even that, like just, you know, I'm probably just too old for it.
Anything else you want to get off your chest for the from the Uproxx days?
I don't know. Like I don't regret all of it, or, you know, I think we had some good years in there and we had a lot of great experiences doing stuff with Uproxx and for Uproxx. But you know, I'm not 100% sure that like being in the business of publishing words was like the main thing that they were doing it for. And that's tough. Like it's always easier to be in business with people that want to publish writing like at the core of their business. And it's tough. Like it's tough like looking back on like all the years where it was like, yeah, I'm trying to use this part of the company to like do what I want, which is to write things, but I don't get the feeling that they like care about that as a key part of their business, you know?
Were you able to preserve all the stuff you wrote, or like, I assume you don't have the rights to it, but you know, just in case like the website just completely falters at some point, were you able
Yeah,
to like,
I pay for a service called Authory, which does that. And then also like I have other stuff like backed up in various places. Yeah, I don't know that like what I would do with it other than like reference it sometimes. But yeah, I think I hope that I have it um, backed up.
throw it in a vault and charge money for it?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't do that because I'd get sued probably. But yeah.
Man, it just makes me want to start a new blog network. That's what I'm getting from this.
Yeah. Like what was like the first site or the first thing that you made that sort of made it take off?
Well, I think What Would Tyler Durden Do by far was like the one that broke into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the one where I think it was up to like 7 million visitors a month at that point. And a company called BuzzNet came along and they were just like hoovering up all the entertainment blogs. They bought The Superficial eventually. They bought Just Jared. They ended up buying like Spin Magazine.
Yeah, I think
they kind of got it
at one point. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. So they got in my ear about like, you know, we're pulling all this stuff together. And, you know, for me, that was, well, first of all, like they weren't interested in With Leather and FIlmdrunk because they had just kind of started. And so in my mind, this was like an opportunity to kind of hedge a little bit. Like, okay, well, they want to buy What Would Tyler Durden Do? I'll make sure that in the contract it says these sites can still, you know, bounce traffic around. And then I'll go, you know, with Matt and Vince and we'll see where this goes. And then Uproxx came along and it was like, all right, well, I'm not sure I buy everything that either of these people are selling me, but like I can kind of like hedge my bets a little bit and, you know, have chips with both of them. And then actually, like, as much as I regret breaking things up, that ended up being the right move because BuzzNet like completely just flamed out.
Right.
I remember being on the phone with their CFO for a couple of weeks and eventually him just being like, yeah, everything you have in paper here is just gone. Like, don't expect to have anything out of this. So I kind of went my own way and started Clip Nation, which was like a viral video site. Later on, like Jarrett came around and was like, you know, we did like an acqui-hire thing where they bought that site, but really it was like, I was just going to come work at Uproxx. And I'd say for, you know, several years, it turned out pretty good. Like I really enjoyed where we were going.
Yeah, no, same. But so when you started, what would Tyler Durden do? Like, what did that look like? Were you was did you just like sort of poach Brendan and decide to like do a like do something that looked like blogs that you'd seen?
That was, yeah, pretty much the pitch to him was like, I can't remember which side he was at. Was he at the Superficial or was it
Yeah,
one of the
yeah,
other ones?
yeah. It was, yeah.
It was like, you're the funniest guy here. Let's try to like do this the right way and
Mm-hmm.
like take the shackles off a little bit. And he did a great job. I mean, he was cranking out like 7 or 8 posts a day.
Yeah, still
Just,
hilarious.
yeah, definitely. But
Yeah.
then it became like, okay, we have this thing. Let's figure out, how to parlay it into something a little bit bigger. And I saw Matt in the Deadspin comments, just like lighting it up. He's the funniest guy in there. I was like, hey, I have this site. Do you want to do an offshoot of this? Let's try that. And then eventually he, told me about you too. And I think you emailed me first, but you guys had kind of talked back and forth a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah. But like when you decided to poach Brendan, like you just had an idea that you're like, I want to run like a blog, or I want to run a blog network.
It was kind of, yeah, like I liked seeing that. I knew the CPMs. I knew
Mm-hmm.
what I could pay him if we got it going. So yeah.
That's cool. I would have had no idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that side of it for sure at the beginning. I mean, it was also probably simpler, uh, in the early days.
Well,
But
it was
yeah,
also just
yeah,
so new. So the people who were telling you like you're too young and you don't know what you're doing, I should not have listened to any of them because we were all kind of winging it. And
mm-hmm.
I think the people with the best instincts for what people wanted to read and see were the ones that did the best. And as soon as, quote unquote suits got involved, things just like fell apart.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the innocence of it was like, saying, okay, what do people want to see and read, and then doing that, and then the complication is like how do we game the various. I mean, it went from how do we give people what they want to read to like how can we game this entire system of traffic and like funnel it in our. I mean, and now it's completely perverted with like AI like scrapes like the most popular posts and reposts it on a new site within like 3 minutes or whatever. It's wild. It's wild.
Hey, I've never felt like tricking someone into reading is a viable business model or viewing.
Not only that,
Like,
but like not only does it not feel like a viable business model, like I'm sure if your like ultimate goal was I want to make money or whatever, you probably would have done like something else. Like part of it was, you know, I imagine like at least for me, like most of the joy was creating something that people want to read and getting sort of the feedback of that. Like I didn't, the numbers were more just a way to facilitate us being able to have fun and sort of create with this like new medium back then. So like, yeah, if your thing is, oh yeah, I figured out how to train an AI to like scrape another popular site and repost it, and I got these numbers, and it's like, okay, well, what sense of validation is that giving you? I guess.
it also complicates things when you have investors, you have debt, you have these arbitrary numbers you have to hit every month. We didn't have that when it was like our little core team. I was just making sure we are a profitable business, which I know is a foreign concept to most people in media. But like we didn't say, Vince, you have to hit 7 million page views this month. It was, Vince, you have to do your articles and let's make sure the audience is growing and liking it. And
Yeah.
that was it. Like we never had quotas.
Right. Well, this was also before like traffic meant hitting like the Google Newsreader lottery. Like traffic
Yeah.
was literally just like repeat readers and like people sharing it. Like that very much turned into like Google shares and Facebook shares, and then if you're trying to compete, like you're trying to take your like your core base of readers that are like people that enjoy the site and then are coming back every day, which to me is like the real traffic.
Right.
And you're trying to compete with like it's something that's just getting picked up by like a giant aggregator, and like that traffic is gonna like obviously dwarf any of the organic stuff. So it goes from like trying to create repeat readers to like trying to win like the aggregator lottery. And like that was sort of where it started to turn, it seems like.
Do you think there's ever a way to go back? Because, I mean, no one's bookmarking websites anymore. I guess newsletters probably make sense because it's the least algorithm driven because people subscribe and get a message. But do you think we could ever go back to where like people have their 7 or 8 websites or newsletters they read every day?
I mean, yeah, like yes and no. Like I don't think it's ever possible to go back, but it does really feel like we're in the media cycle of like reinventing things that we already have, where like streaming's gradually turning back into cable, and like the internet, like, I saw after the AI redesign of Google, I saw like the giant list of traffic, or giant list of like the top 100 websites, and like the amount of traffic that had fallen off because of that. And I think GQ's was like, I think they'd lost like 80% of their, or like between 70 and 90% of their Google traffic, like based on one redesign. So like that thing where you could just like count on the big aggregators is dead. So in a sense, like we are like recreating the thing where you have a handful of websites that you like, um and go to. Like it's much harder to like get your news from one aggregator. And so we're reinventing it in a weird way. Like you said, I have a handful of newsletters that are probably one of the main ways that I get news and find things that I want to read on the internet. So like it is coming back in that way. And I'm sort of back in this stage of, trying to get repeat readers and organic traffic, rather, because, once you take ad revenue out of the equation, like trying to hit the viral lottery like is not relevant anymore. Like nothing but like the actual organic traffic and like tangible eyeballs does anything for you, which is nice. But yeah.
Yeah, you've always done a really good job of, you built your core audience. You've kind of gotten them to follow you from platform to platform. I mean, you start podcast, a newsletter. Do you have any advice for people for like building an audience like that if they're starting from scratch? Because you've at least been able to kind of carry over from platform to platform.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a fraud, or for giving advice, because obviously, like, I feel fortunate to have the audience that I've had that has been able to sort of follow me from place to place. But I also feel like, man, I wish it was just like, what if it was like double or like triple, to where it was, where I didn't still feel like I had to, uh, you know, cobble together like 6 kind of jobs, which is sort of where I'm at right now. But in terms of, you know, getting being able to have them follow me, I hope it wasn't just right place, the right time, but I'd like to think that there was a little bit of just knowing yourself, and not like writing the things that you know how to write and that you would want to read yourself, and not, you know, not trying to write for some other publication or some other person. I think there's like a Hunter S. Thompson quote about like, yeah, I never had any success until I stopped trying to write like the New York Times or something like that. And it was kind of like that for me, like I had like smaller jobs in, copywriting and working for like a tiny local paper, but I never really had any professional success until I found a medium where I could just sort of write the way I wanted to, and not try to write it, in like the traditional journalistic way, or in like the whatever the copywriting world wanted. Once I could just sort of like write the jokes that I think are funny and the things that I think are interesting, like once I could do that, it was much easier. That was the first time I had any sort of success, was when I found a way to do that.
Do you have a platform you think someone starting out should try out? Like, should they jump into Substack? Should they try to get a job at like a known entity so they can get their name out? I don't think people are really hiring for,
Yeah,
voicey things from a nobody, but
that's a
I don't know if
great
you have any
question.
tricks.
Like I can barely get like freelance pieces, and I've been doing this for like 17 years now. Um, Newsletters, like obviously I have one, so I think there's like some validity to it. It's hard for yeah, like you said, it's not. It's we're in like a we're in a weird transitional phase where like where do you if you have like a voicey piece that someone is going to remember you for, where do you take it? I don't really know the answer to that,
Well,
honestly.
you're on Substack. Have you, I mean, other than your existing audience and maybe them sharing, have you figured out any tips or tricks, or maybe there's like the network effect of Substack to tap into? Like, how are you growing
I
on
wish I
there?
knew. I mean,
Uh,
I'm just doing like I'm sort of doing the things that I've always done, which is be on Twitter and Blue Sky and like the zombie Facebook where I sort of post links and Instagram. But yeah, I don't really know. Like I'm sure there is some network effect of Substack, and I imagine that will only grow, and there are other newsletters out there. But yeah, like other than um trying to I feel in some sense the way that all of the people that are earning a living is like finding people that have a bigger following than you, and either like you know trying to collaborate or do stuff for that. Like I have done stuff for other bigger Substacks a little bit here and there. Other than that, like yeah, I don't know. Like obviously I try to network with other people who podcast and do as much of that as I can. But I think we're still out here just trying to figure out what works. Like I don't think that ever changes.
I tried to do this in the intro, but it's pretty hard to summarize what the content report is.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing movie criticism. You're doing your classic Vince stuff like This Week in Posters, Top Chef Power Rankings. What is like the pitch for someone to subscribe and potentially pay for subscription there?
Yeah, well, most of the arts criticism sections of any magazine have been sort of hollowed out. So yeah, it's a collection of arts criticism, funny stuff, and personal essays, basically, like just sort of culture writing in general. I wish I was better at like branding. I'm not good at elevator pitches, which is part of the reason that I am where I am and am who I am, I guess.
I think that's a good thing. What's next for Vince? You got anything else like cooking that you want to pitch here or to
Mm,
promote?
that I want to pitch. No, I mean, I'm always like trying to brainstorm book proposals, but most of the stuff that I do, I just sort of either pitch to a handful of editors that I still talk to, or just put it straight on Substack because that.
We haven't talked about the Pod Yourself
Mm-hmm.
series. Like you've done The Sopranos, you've done The Wire.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about a little bit like what those actually are
Sure.
and what might be coming next too? Like, have you guys brainstormed the next series you're going to do?
Yeah, I think we're sort of torn between The Leftovers and Mad Men right now, both of which
Oh, nice.
I enjoy. But yeah, like it's funny, like yeah, on Substack, obviously, like I'm writing the Top Chef recaps, which I've always enjoyed doing. It's also sort of like a weird thing because I don't know, like it's hard for me to like brand myself as professional like Top Chef watcher, but like in terms of a content strategy, like I went from like 300 subscribers to like 600 in like 2 months as soon as Top Chef restarted, basically. So it's like you do find your niche audiences, through television shows like that in that way, and I hope I'm trying to use that to carry those people over that maybe discover me through Top Chef or whatever, and get them on board with whatever other dumb thing I want to do, whether it's a movie review or like an essay about something. That's sort of like the general strategy goal. And it was kind of the same way with the um Pod Yourself a Gun, which was the first one we did. We had the Frotcast, which was you know like what do you call it? Like a hangout. It's a hangout podcast, with occasional like film people guesting, and we talk about movies to some degree, but mostly it's a hangout. And then so we were kind of like, what if we had a podcast that had like a streamlined pitch and like a hook? Because like the Frotcast, it really had no hook. It was like, okay, hopefully you like us and you want to like keep listening while we enjoy ourselves. So it was like coming up on the 20th anniversary of The Sopranos. So we were like, oh, what if we watched one episode every week and did a podcast just like about that episode? And after that, it sort of came together pretty organically, and we had a decent amount of success with it. And so we were like, all right, well, we got to keep it going. And The Wire seemed like the most natural choice after that, which was also coming up on its like 20-year nostalgia cycle, right as we were finishing up Sopranos. And then we just finished that. So yeah, now we're trying to come up with a new one. The format, it seems to be pretty self-explanatory and easier to explain to people, I guess.
You guys have gotten some pretty good guests on those too. Is there anyone that you were kind of surprised wanted to appear on the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think LP from Run the Jewels was like the most surprising one. Yeah, it's funny, like we just get like random guests from the music world, like LP and Max Collins from Eve Six, but that basically just came about through like Twitter. Like you occasionally see like people that are music famous that are like funny on Twitter and have a personality, and they sort of gravitate towards each other that way. But yeah, we had Robert Eiler on, who plays AJ. We had Joe Ganascoli, who plays Vito, on. So it's pretty fun. I'm sure we could be like a lot more ambitious in trying to get better guests too, but it's always finding a balance between how hard do you want to work for the big guests and how much do you just want to try and focus on making a good show.
What is that process like when you're trying to lure a guest in? Is it like a spray and pray situation where you're like climbing into everyone's DMs, or are you going through actual publicists?
No, I think maybe I've gone through one or two publicists for that, but no, it's usually like someone pops up on the I think I did cold email Robert Eiler, and that's how that one came about. I'm not positive. Yeah, Joe Ganascoli like found us either on Twitter or through email. So it's usually like when someone there's an in somehow, like or if LP reacted to something we wrote about The Sopranos on Twitter, it's like, oh, we should just DM them. Like that tends to be how things come about for us, much more than we haven't written like a ton of cold emails or contacted a ton of publicists. I mean, I'm sure like the podcasts that are like the famous ones, like there's a lot of working with publicists and trying to get like the biggest guests possible. But I don't know, we've always sort of focused much more on just trying to put together a good show, because that's something that we can control more.
Yeah, it helps when the person actually wants to be there too. It's not just something their publicist told them to do.
Yeah, it's funny to watch those where these people just show up on those shows and clearly like don't. But it's also like the weird media environment we're in now, like sort of helps with that, because I feel like I'm not super ambitious about trying to get like huge stars, but at the same time, people that I have asked, like they don't ask many questions. You kind of just like, hey, you want to be on my podcast? And a lot of times they're kind of just like, okay, sure. Because like, what does anyone know about like what is a big media outlet anymore? Like
Exactly.
What's moving? Yeah.
They show up and they're just like, what is this again?
Yeah.
All right, Vince, let's get to our dumb internet questions. The first one, tab check right now. How many tabs do you have open on the web browser of your choice?
Is there like a thing that shows that, or do I have to just physically count them?
I think you got to count them. We'll
Oh,
wait.
man.
You could guesstimate if you want. I think we're eventually
Hold
going to
on.
put a leaderboard up. So actually, as accurate as you can be would be nice.
I think 18 today.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah, that's low. I mean, you could ask me like how many unread emails are popping up on my Mac Mail.
Yeah, how many unreads do you have right now in there?
Let's see. On the computer, I have 34,601.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know what my phone is like, or if it's worse or better.
Is 18 pretty typical for the tabs, or like if you're working on a project, I assume that balloons?
Yeah, I mean that's probably standard. Yeah, it depends. Like,
Nice.
you know, if when I had to do an equivalency petition for this English class that I'm teaching, and so I had to, like, there was at least like 20 tabs there where I had to, like, the process is too asinine to describe, but basically, like, I had to find other master's programs that were like equivalent to the one to my MFA program. So I had to, like, I had to go to a lot of college websites, and and so, you know, anytime you have like a project like that, or if I have, you know, writing like a retrospective on a movie, I'm gonna have like 10 more just from that.
Do you ever get down to like a core number, like your 3 tabs you always have open?
No, I'm too disorganized for that.
Have you made the full like transition to Blue Sky? Are you like putting everything you put on Twitter also there?
Not a full transit. I'm just sort of annoyed that there's both right now, because I don't like Blue Sky has not grown into a full replacement for Twitter, but I still check it. So now it's just like an extra thing to check. It's obnoxious.
Have you given Threads the time of day?
I haven't. No, I see it on, like, when it pops up on Instagram or whatever, but I don't know. Everybody said it was like more normie than Twitter even, and so I was like, what do I need that for?
The brands definitely got there first.
Yeah.
I feel like just by brute force, though, it's going to end up being bigger than all of them, just because Meta is going to force it down everybody's throats.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have to make an account there at some point. I'm tired.
What are some of your favorite accounts to follow on social?
That was a good question. I was like trying to come up with an answer to that one. There's like, I think, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I think it's Brad Trammell. He does like really like satirical sort of Instagram. What do you call it? It's hard to. It's like he collates like people, like very niche, annoying people, and then sort of, it sort of defies description, which is why I enjoy it. But it's like, he'll make like fake PSAs about like just people's confusing opinions, and he'll sort of like he'll twist it like in knots of satire till it's like so out there. I wish I had a better description of it, but it's very funny.
I'm trying to find it. Tromel? That Trammell?
TROE, I think, MEL.
Got it. All right. I'm bookmarking that for later.
Yeah. There's another one. These guys haven't posted for a while, but I think they just have an Instagram account. I think it's called like Easy Boys or something, and they just seem like 3 or 4 Hawaiian dudes that mostly like fart on each other and do jokes involving one of them wearing a thong. But it's pretty fun. It's pretty funny. Yeah.
All right. What is a corner of the internet people might be surprised you're interested in?
I do like, I look for a lot of gardening tips, you know, about like maximizing my tomato yield, and enjoy people's like doing like the vertical gardening thing where they have those big pots that sort of grow out the side. So yeah, I end up in a lot of gardening related websites and Instagrams.
I was going to ask what platform that's on. It seems like that would be a Reddit thing that you could really eat up.
Yeah, I sort of go on Reddit every now and then, but I never got too deep into it because it was always like a little on the busier end of the spectrum that I could handle.
What is the last thing that made you truly laugh online?
I think I just sent this yesterday. It was I don't even know what podcast it was from, but I guess they were talking about like Ben Mendelsohn, the actor, and they're doing like a Ben Mendelsohn impression, and I can I can send it to you because it's. But yeah, it was basically just like a guy doing an extended Ben Mendelsohn impression that was very funny to me for whatever reason.
All right, I need to see that.
He's just one of those actors that is very enjoyable. Any actor that sort of seems like kind of a dirtbag and sleeps in his car is yeah, he seems very like dirtbag Australian, and I love that about him.
Perfect. All right, let's get to the dark side. What was your most scarring moment on the internet, if you can bring yourself to disclose it?
I'm trying. Yeah, like whenever you see that prompt on Twitter where it's like, when were you like the main character of Twitter? I think like the only time that happened was when I was working with this guy Oliver Noble, who was like a video editor, and he would like sort of put together super cuts, and like we did one where it was called like Hot Girls Pandering to Nerds, um, because like that in the early to mid like 20 teens when what was that show that Olivia Munn used to host? Yeah, it was like the Chris Hardwick, like whatever that show era was, where like you know being a nerd was like the coolest thing, and of course it's sort of like
Oh,
the
Attack of the
phenomenon.
Show is what it was called.
What was it? Oh, Attack
Right?
of the Show. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like the phenomenon of like the Comic-Con booth babe that sort of like metastasized into culture. So we like I mean, the idea was, yeah, like actresses on late night shows, like talking about, Star Wars and doing like their Wookiee impression or whatever. And like there was like a backlash to it because at the time there was all these people like that was like their entire brand online was like girl geek and blah 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 and the this show or that show, and it was like they twisted it into like we were saying that it wasn't okay for like girls to like Star Wars, where it was like, no, that wasn't that wasn't what the video was about. It's not what the video was about. It was about like when some actress goes on uh Kimmel or whatever and is like, I'm such a nerd, I like this and that and that, and I was like, okay.
Was that a social media outrage? Was that like written
Yeah,
about in mainstream stuff?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think I got like a couple interview requests, and I don't know. They always wanted to turn it into like me being like the comic book guy, which like I'm obviously not, and I couldn't really like play that role because I don't know. It just sort of got lumped into like, oh, he's gatekeeping. I was like, no. I think all like fandom as like a performative act is lame. It doesn't really matter who's doing it.
So when you're trying to get away from that stuff, how do you pry yourself away from your devices or log off?
I have a lot of annoying hobbies like golf and jujitsu. So yeah, it's pretty easy to log off when I'm golfing or when I'm like trying not to get choked. But those are
Nice.
or just parenting when I'm
Yeah,
like
that'll do it.
fighting with. Sorry, go ahead. When
Where?
my
Oh, go ahead.
2-year-old is throwing his shoes at me like he did this morning, he just nailed me
Nice
in the
little-
back of the head in the car because he was mad.
Where would you be without the internet?
Oh, hopefully like happy, healthy, normal, um, working like a stable job instead of like a series of series of pseudo hobbies. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I feel like I got into like the internet became a career early on, like unexpectedly, like while I was in the middle of one of those like quarter life crises where I felt like I was trying to make some form of art like into career. And I don't know. Feel like a lot of people that do like writing or comedy like aren't they do it because they didn't like school or they weren't good at school. And I was always good at school. I was bad at like being an employee and like and I was bad at working and being an employee. So I sort of got into it that way. But early on I was like, maybe I should just like chuck this and like go to medical school or do something that involves like being good at school for longer, which I guess I sort of did by going to like writing school, which is the least financially intelligent decision that a person could make. So I don't know, maybe I would have like gone to law school or medical school or done something that was like very normy and then just tried to do my little jokes to friends afterward. I don't know.
I feel like you would have gone into stand up at least on the side, right? I mean, you were doing that even with the internet.
Yeah, I was doing that with the internet. I don't know. It's tough to know like if I had the constitution for that, because like I get like the people that are successful at stand up or the ones that I saw were they're going to like 2 or 3 open mics like every night. Like it's very much like if you're doing that, I don't know how you have any other like social life or relationships like that. You're sort of seems like you kind of have to be married to the game. And
Sure.
I don't know, like I don't think I was ever married to the game in the way that I would have had to be to like pursue that seriously instead of just sort of dabbling in it like I did.
Got it. What is the one thing on the internet you'd save if it all went bye-bye tomorrow?
Oh, I forgot to come up with a good answer for this one.
Oh man, improv. Let's go.
Oh, what would I save? I mean, I guess you can have like non-internet porn, so we don't need to save that. Like we have porn in other forms. We can watch that on like DVD. Um, what is internet native that you can't find anywhere else? That's such a tough question.
Scott Rogowski from HQ Trivia said, "I like turtles, kid." He would just save that one video.
That one video.
Yeah.
Oh, like I have a few videos saved, like from Vine. Like the DMX llama is still in my like favorite somewhere. There's one where it's like the video is of like Orthodox Jewish guys like doing like their traditional dances, but it's set to the song "I Got Bitches," and it syncs up really well, and it's just like I mean, it's a funny song in general, but it's a very good juxtaposition. God, I don't know. I'm punting on that one. I don't even know.
All right, punt away. Somebody else said the Internet Archive, so you can't do worse than that. That was like the worst answer we've ever gotten.
Yeah, that's cheating. That's cheating.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to think of like short form. I don't know. I got nothing.
All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with DMX Llama. Like he makes me happy every time. I don't know if you remember that one, but
I do remember that one. In
yeah,
fact,
yeah.
did you say you have that bookmarked? Is that still on the Vine domain somehow?
That is a good question. I gotta look it up. Yeah, it's still on the Vine.
Incredible.
Yep, still there.
I'm gonna put that as like the closing music to this episode.
Yeah, I can send you the link if you need it. It's still there.
Please do. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Vince, for this discussion and for your contributions to the internet. This is Ryan Perry saying log off. The internet will still be there when you get back.